Howdy, folks. Do you like blowing up Imperial troopers with impunity? Traveling around the galaxy exploring shady smuggler cities or Sith UNESCO sites? How about epic lightsaber battles, the light versus the dark side, or even this guy? Well, you're in luck, because today we'll focus on all of that and more through a series of video games that encompass what is so enthralling about the Star Wars universe, and I think deserve more recognition because sadly, they've faded away out of the Star Wars zeitgeist. We're going to be following Kyle Katarn, one of my favorite characters for a multitude of reasons, which we'll touch on throughout the video, and his quest to find balance and meaning in this chaotic galaxy. To do this, we'll adventure through Dark Forces 1 and 2, Mysteries of the Sith, which is the DLC for Dark Forces 2, and Jedi Outcast. I won't be covering Jedi Academy since you don't play Mr. Katarn, but if you'd like that video at some point, let me know. Kyle's story unfolds as we play through the games, but it's important to know a simplified backstory. Kyle was a former Imperial officer who defected to the Rebellion and at the start of Dark Forces 1 completes covert missions for them. He's a normal mercenary armed with only a blaster pistol and his knowledge of all things Imperial, which is a great base considering a lot of the Star Wars characters are gifted right off the bat. Another interesting aspect of playing through these games is the evolution of gaming itself. Dark Forces 1 was made all the way back in 1995 and looked like this on my computer. Fortunately for my capture software and sanity, the amazing people at Night Dive Studios remastered Dark Forces in February of last year and did a fantastic job, blending the old school art style and sound design into a more accessible medium. I cannot stress this fact enough, seeing the visual changes throughout the games and the tangible feeling you get playing through their evolution in all facets of sound design, graphical enhancements, gameplay rhythm, and narrative scope are breathtaking and truly an experience. We'll focus on those aspects and more as we start our journey with Kyle Katarn. Dark Forces begins with the iconic opening crawl, where the player is informed that the Empire is doing their Empire things, conquering galaxies and constructing the Death Star. Even though these games aren't canon, they do intermingle with episodes 4 through 6, but I'm not a true Star Wars expert, so if I get timeline stuff mixed up, just let me know. The rebels are desperate to stop this planet destroyer and need to steal the plans to understand the Death Star's vulnerabilities, and this is where Kyle comes in. As I mentioned before, Kyle is a former Imperial officer and has intimate knowledge of how they function. Also, he might know that 99% of the Empire's forces have terrible accuracy, which makes him more confident. Kyle's first mission is to infiltrate the Imperial base where the plans are stored, and off we go. When Dark Forces came out in 1995, there was a lot of criticism for it being a Doom clone, which, if you watch 10 seconds of this gameplay, is understandable. It's also interesting after 30 years how this isn't relevant, at least in my mind, since the experiences are different and games nowadays take a lot of inspiration from each other. The remaster did a great job at keeping what the original felt like, but adding a polish to it that was enjoyable. Items were clearly visible, blaster noises still hit, and the animations of the sprites were surprisingly clear. Nothing about the actual gameplay design was changed, so if you had played the original, all the keys were in the same spots, enemy placements were the same, and it works great to this day. Kyle easily takes out the Imperial guards, takes the plans, and we head back to our ship, the Moldy Crow. This level was short, but in my research, this was the demo level, so that makes a bit more sense. Oh god, that skybox though, that had my motion sickness in full gear.
Kyle delivers the plans to the Rebel Alliance. Soon afterwards, the Death Star is destroyed. But even as the Alliance celebrates this victory, another sinister plot is set in motion that will become an even greater concern for the Rebellion.
Kyle returns the plans to the Rebel Alliance, the Death Star is destroyed by Luke and company, but no matter what losses the Empire endures, they always have another plan. Oh my god, it's that guy. What's his name? No, I'm kidding. The remaster also redid the cutscenes from the original, and they look great. I don't know what this art style is dubbed, but it evoked a moving painting, which I liked. Vader doesn't even mention the Death Star being destroyed and instead talks to General Mock about a demonstration, who calls for the Dark Trooper to be released, and we get this awesome cinematic. I know Fallout came out 3 years after Dark Forces, but I couldn't help comparing these Dark Troopers to power armor. This idea of a more powerful stormtrooper is intriguing as well, since the Empire has all this technological know-how, but seemingly never upgraded their troops, until now. Back with the rebels, Kyle meets with Mon Mothma, who explains what the demonstration we just witnessed was all about. Tac Base, a rebel outpost, was destroyed within a matter of minutes, and our keen mercenary noticed from the short distress call that whatever caused this quick victory for the Empire, they were using new weapons. Mon Mothma continues telling Kyle that an Imperial officer, Crix Madine, wants to defect and has information on the Dark Trooper program, so we'll need to secure him at some point. We also get a little bit more character from Kyle, and shows one of the reasons why I like him so much in this universe. Kyle is not blatantly good nor bad. He's had enough experience through his many adventures where he blurs the line.
A new stormtrooper that can take out a rebel base that quickly? I should have kept working for the Empire.
His little quip about maybe he shouldn't have left the Empire after hearing that the rebel base was destroyed in minutes, I don't think was a joke. But he accepts the mission under one condition. Jan Ors will be his mission officer. Jan tells Kyle about the situation on the TAC base with this text. Every mission has one of these briefs, and even though I kind of wish it was voiced, I still like them. Kyle will have to find and restart the hydroelectric generator to gain access deeper into the base, where he'll encounter heavy Imperial presence and find some clues on the Dark Troopers. We get set down by Jan, and off we go killing again. I didn't know what to expect from the gameplay, but every mission has their shooting portions and puzzle portions. Shooting was always fun, and I was impressed with the arsenal at Kyle's disposal later in the game. The puzzles, however, could be daunting. Luckily, finding the generator and turning it on wasn't so bad, and it unlocked the area where we find one of the Dark Troopers' guns, which is our next lead. Kyle does have to make it back to the ship, and it was impressive that the level changes on your way back. Some doors are blocked that were previously opened, and new enemies appear to spice things up. Kyle makes it back to the ship, and he and Jan discuss the weapon that was found, saying it's too large for human use, which is a great way to set up the Dark Troopers. Jan is observant and sees that the gun has a signature on it, from an infamous weapons specialist named Moff Rebus, who is known for being paranoid and extremely loyal to the Empire. How paranoid, you ask? Well, he's built a secret hideout in a goddamn sewage disposal system under a city. What's with Star Wars and disposal systems? This level was difficult, not because of the enemies, but from this puzzle. Rebus is somewhere in the system, and getting to him is not easy. The player has to unlock individual passageways and interact with the flow of sewage. I hope I don't have to keep saying it. With the beauty of editing, you won't have to experience the 40 minutes it took me to understand what I was supposed to be doing, or getting flushed back to the beginning because I went the wrong way. After killing some droid and poop monsters, sorry I couldn't help myself, we elevate the sewage levels and get past this stinky puzzle. We confront Rebus, who looks pretty cool. Seriously, the sprite work is amazing considering it's all 2D. And luckily we don't have to make our way back through the puzzle to the ship. Rebus didn't give us any specific answers, weirdly, but our defector Crix Madine has confirmed the existence of an Imperial weapons site on the planet Fest, where they're using some new alloy material for production, and off we go. Arriving at Fest, Kyle is placed in the Craters Mountains and has to navigate his way through the production base. There is a third gameplay aspect to the series which I didn't mention before, and that's platforming. I can give it a bit of leniency when it comes to the first Dark Forces, but oh man, when the next games have some Mario 64-esque level design, I'm going to talk about it. I also want to mention now that Dark Force's soundtrack slaps and has a great variety of level-specific scores that drew me in, especially here. Kyle is not some epic Jedi or Sith that clears paths with the movement of his hand, for now, so getting this Bond-like infiltration music fit in a lot of ways, and Mysteries of the Sith has one of the best iterations of the Star Wars main theme I've ever heard. I really hope it doesn't get copyright striked. We get into the base and have to solve a puzzle, inputting codes to unlock doors. This method makes the player explore the whole place, which on paper is good, but in practice can be a bit tedious. Dark Forces has objectives on your PDA, but getting hints through text or environmental design rarely happens. I will happily admit that once I thought of smashing my head against my monitor while going in circles for a good amount of time, I used the old walkthrough from 2001, and man, form walkthroughs were the best. Kyle solves another puzzle and grabs the new alloy so the rebels can analyze it back on the ship, and how the hell do I get out of here? Now, I did discover in this level there is a map which helped immensely in my times of need. It's easy to discern and the fog of war dissipates after you explore each area. I wish the same was true of Dark Forces 2, but that's a remaster to original discrepancy. With the alloy research, Jan informs us that the material is called Fyric, which is extremely rare and used for the armor of the Dark Troopers. Because of its scarcity, the only known source of the alloy is from a small moon in the Gromos system, where the Empire has a mining base, and we'll need to blow it up. Hell yeah. Oh, it's so orange. Ammo is kind of scarce, so you can't just hold down the left mouse button, but when you do have it, you're blasting Imperial scum like they're flies. You can also get access to the BFG. I'm not joking, that's what this weapon felt like. But the repeater was so good and your normal blaster so efficient, I tended not to use the more eccentric arms. I have to commend the original level designers here, because even though the interior environments lacked a lot of depth, since I think the game had like 16 megabytes of memory to it, the level sizes themselves were large. And with how the puzzles were laid out, I thought it filled out the level quite well. Kyle finds where the charges are to be placed, but after setting them, we encounter an unfinished Dark Trooper that looked like the Terminator. I loved this since these Dark Troopers weren't just manufactured in one place. There was a scope to this project that spanned multiple planets that made it feel real, rather than some fantasy enemy being summoned in large numbers. Also, screw this hallway. With the charges detonated, Kyle and Jan escape, but our informant is not so lucky. Mock and Vader have captured him and know that he's been divulging information to the rebellion. Scott Lawrence does an excellent job at voicing Vader here, and he has a lot of Star Wars games under his career belt.
Katarn will not be as easy to deal with. He is very resourceful. More resourceful, it seems, than even your Dark Troopers.
Mock disparages Kyle, calling him weak, but also hires frickin' Boba Fett, which is kind of a cool cameo. Our next mission tasks Kyle and Jan with saving Crix from the Imperial Detention Center, and even though the game talks about utilizing stealth, I didn't think that that was possible, since enemies usually have a sixth sense about your presence in an area. As I've mentioned before, navigating these levels can be tricky, even with a map. But there was another problem I started to notice, and that was not being told anything about environmental mechanics. Here we see a highlighted window that looks like you can just walk through it, but you can also tell that bullets from both sides bounce off. In retrospect, or while viewing this video, it might be easy to figure out what you're supposed to do, but at the time, before looking it up, how the hell was I supposed to know you have to wait for the flashing to stop, which is like 2 seconds max before the field goes back up? I think in these moments, and there are a lot of them coming up, a simple voice line would have been sufficient, or even one of these force fields at the beginning of the level showing the player how to traverse them. The levels kept getting more intricate, multiple puzzles needed solving, there was some difficult but rational platforming, and finally Kyle finds Medine. He doesn't look too enthused to see us. Medine tells us about Mock and his ambitions for the Dark Trooper project. We also get some cool backstory to the General, how he opposed the Death Star because he likes hand-to-hand combat and distrusts technology. It's nice that they add these small characteristics in the mission briefings since we don't have a lot of FaceTime with him. Crix also tells us that the Fyric alloy gets transported to some robotics facility for the next phase of the Dark Trooper production, and then finishes on a spacecraft called the Arkhammer. Where those two things are, we have no idea. Our only lead is that Mock has used smugglers to transport the materials to and from the base and Arkhammer, so if we could get a tracking unit on one of them, it might lead us to where we need to go. Kyle easily puts the tracking device on the smuggler's ship, and we follow it to a remote planet called Antivy, where the Imperial construction facility has been created under dense sheets of ice. Walking around the ice was literally walking on ice. I thought this was kind of impressive that the environment had tangible effects on the movement, but I also unexpectedly curled the monkey paw because of this goddamn section. Okay, I'm jumping the blaster here. Kyle goes through this conveyor belt puzzle, which had some difficult timings to it, and gains access to the refining portion of the base. Jan was right, and waiting for us after setting the charges was our first encounter with a complete Dark Trooper, which looked awesome and packed a punch. Another explosion and another job well done. Jan informs us that Mach has put a bounty on our heads and that every bounty hunter in the galaxy will be looking for us, but I'm not too worried. Jan also has tracked more of the smuggling ships that had used the route between the two previous planets, and they all end up in Nar Shaddaa, which is like the New York from the 1920s of this galaxy. Real smuggler's den. Kyle is tasked with finding out how the Empire is giving the smugglers orders for shipments, which can be found on a nifty Imperial navigation chart somewhere in the seedy underbelly of the city. I don't know if it was because we didn't get a lot of detailed environmental information before, but the graffiti on Nar Shaddaa was cool to see, even though they hate Ewoks apparently. I haven't really talked about the enemy types yet, and Nar Shaddaa is full of them. There are these axe green pig dudes called Gamarians who will hit you through your shields with their big axes. Then we have the grenade throwers that, holy god, later on grenade spam you worse than Call of Duty. We do find a new weapon though that makes mincemeat out of both. Kyle eventually finds the Imperial nav charts we were looking for, but something goes wrong. The ship is captured and we meet with Jabba the Hutt. No, not Pizza the Hutt, telling us that he wants to claim the bounty on our head, but he also wants us to die to his favorite Kel dragon. How nice. Yes, we have to barehand brawl a Kel dragon, and win. This is your certified badass moment. Certified badass. We grab our stuff back and decimate Jabba's forces until we find Jan locked up. With no one to stop us getting our ship, the two depart with the nav charts in hand. But there's a catch. The device is encrypted and we'll need to enter one of the Empire's supercomputers to decode it, which is located in the Imperial City. Time to load up on some blaster ammo. Surprisingly, there wasn't that much resistance to us entering the city. The only challenging part was this hexagon puzzle that, again, in retrospect, easy to understand now, but oh boy was I scratching my head in the moment. Luckily, editing is a thing, but I might put some Benny Hill music and speed this up, who knows. Finally, we get access to the computer and decode the nav files, but as we make it back to the ship, Jan warns us of something before her radio cuts out. Kyle makes it back to where the ship should have been, but instead we get a boss fight with Boba Fett. After some plasma cannoning to his face, Kyle is victorious, and from the data we get off the encrypted nav device, we have our next destination, the Executor. It's smart that the Imperials didn't trust smugglers. The Executor is a superstar destroyer that takes in the processed materials the smugglers transport, and then rendezvous with the Arc Hammer separately for discretion. Kyle can hijack one of the transport ships to get in undetected and then hopefully reach the Arc Hammer from there. Katarn goes through the spaceport hosting the smugglers' transport crafts, kills even more guards, like god damn, this game should have had a kill count, realigns the docking mechanism and takes the ship. That sentence was around 30 seconds. This mission took me 45 minutes. That's just the mercenary side of life, and going in blind with the level design. On board the Executor, Kyle needs to find the cargo shuttle bay and hopes to sneakily get aboard the Arc Hammer. Thus, he repeater rifles his way through countless enemies, solves a logistical nightmare, and gets aboard the ship. Jan explains that the Arc Hammer is the final manufacturing base for the Dark Troopers, and you get this cool infographic about the two phases of them. There's also a great concept art menu you can access from the main one, which is a more detailed version of these mock-ups. I know every other mission is get to an area, find where the detonators need to be set, and blow it up, but I can't fault a game from 1995 for this. It was just the times, and the context was enough where I didn't mind blowing up Imperials left and right. This level combined everything from the previous ones. Large layout, door puzzles, environmental puzzles, conveyor belts, enemies around every corner. It was working flawlessly. Kyle finds Mach, who I guess transformed himself into a Dark Trooper. I was a bit confused by this, since I thought they were more like robots than humans using armor, but I'll let someone in the comments drop the knowledge on us. Kyle and Mach have an epic fight, and I seriously loved his spec'd out Dark Trooper armor. It was like Frank Horgan, but kind of cooler. Don't quote me on that. Mach is dead by our hand, the Arc Hammer is destroyed in front of Vader, who has an interesting line about Kyle. saying the Force is stronger with him. I thought we were just a regular guy.
This is an unfortunate setback. The Force is strong with Katarn.
Well, I guess we'll see. Katarn heads back to the Rebellion, gets a nifty medal for his actions, and sets off into space. On to Dark Forces 2. Cue the crawl. Dark Forces 2 takes place after the second Death Star is destroyed. The New Republic is trying to gain control of the galaxy, but a new and dangerous force is emerging, the Dark Jedi. Which are Sith, right? Or is there some distinction there? Jarek, the Dark Jedi leader, is seeking out the Valley of the Jedi, a powerful and sacred ancient battleground with more power than any Force user could imagine. Only problem for him is he has no idea where it is. The game starts out with this awesome cutscene, and I couldn't help but think of the Spaceballs line, "Now that's a big ship." Jarek interrogates Master Ran about the valley's location, and oh yeah, it's live-acted cutscenes. This way of directing in video games brings me back to Command & Conquer or Myst. In the 2000s, I have to admit, I didn't like this style, but now it brings a lot more emotion than what we'll see in Mysteries of the Sith. Jarek breaks into Rand's memories, discovering that Morgan Katarn, Kyle's father, was the only one that he trusted with the location of the valley. With this knowledge and no need for Rand any longer, Jarek beheads him. It's a true tonal shift from the first game and sets up Dark Forces 2 as a much grittier depiction of the universe. We then head back to Nar Shaddaa with this amazing camera work showing the scale of the city. Kyle watches an old holodisc of his father and him having a conversation, and again, the direction choices are amazing. Kyle's face being half shrouded in shadow and the other in light, indicating the duality of his character, is striking.
I wish your mother were here to see it. But I know she watches over you, and is proud.
But Kyle's not at a shady bar reminiscing about his late father for nothing. He's here for information on his father's death and has hired 8T88, or I'll call him 88, an information broker to tell him who killed Morgan Katarn, which the droid divulges it was the Dark Jedi Jarek.
Without going into too much detail, Jarek has been quite generous in his offerings. Unfortunately, you don't factor into them.
88 quickly double-crosses Kyle, revealing he's working for Jarek and that he found an encrypted data disk in Kyle's dead father's home, but can't decipher it. Katarn rejects working with the droid and then pulls off this certified badass move.
I'm not interested in leaving. I have some business to conclude with your friend, 88.
It's Kyle Katarn. We will always have a certified badass moment. Just coming from Dark Forces 1, I was happy that the first level begins this way and not with a text briefing. It's a jolt to get into this adventure, and a bit more chaotic as well. Plus the graphical evolution is stunning. I do have to note that I'm using an enhanced texture mod, which if you'd like to play through this game and its DLC, I'd highly recommend. Kyle has to chase down 88 to take back the holodisc, but Nar Shaddaa isn't that easy to traverse. Oh, it's so freaking not. I was blown away by how big this level was and how it flowed into the gameplay. You really felt like you were lost in a hostile city. The changes in verticality, not just for movement but enemy placement as well, made each new area engaging. Another thing that Dark Forces 2 adds from the first game is the scope of the universe. You're not just going to bar blasting away, but seeing the infrastructure, shipping containers, docking bays, and their functionalities too. Katarn finally catches up to 88, blasts the droid's arm off with the holodisc still in its hand, and the droid does get away, but that's not Katarn's biggest concern.
Whenever I need to find you, you're always in some kind of trouble.
Jan makes her triumphant appearance, and I still think these live-action cutscenes add more connection to the characters, even if they're a little corny at times.
What would you do without me, Kyle?
I'd be a content old man.
Somehow I don't see content or an old man.
Kyle still has to find that holodisc, and with more TIE fighters on their way, Jan will rendezvous with us at the top of the tower. Luckily, 88's arm is right at the start of the level, so we pick that up, figure out some puzzles with shipping containers, defeat even more enemies, and get safely on the Moldy Crow, all in a day's work. Jan takes Kyle to a medical frigate to recover from his injuries. I guess he just ran on pure adrenaline after being shot by that TIE fighter. During his medical rest, Kyle has a vision from Master Rand, the Jedi Master who Jarek had killed in the beginning of the game, telling Kyle of the dangers of Jarek finding the valley. He also tells Kyle that his destiny will bring him to the valley, and that the holodisc will show him the path to the Force, which is kind of awesome. They set Kyle having Force abilities in the first game with Vader's last line.
Like always, I owe you. Can you take care of her for me?
You're not going after Jarek, are you?
No. I'm going back to my father's home in Sulan. Can you meet me there when you're finished with the crow?
Of course. Is everything okay?
I don't know. I'll find out when I get there.
Nice transition. On Sulan, we see that Jarek's henchmen have ransacked Kyle's childhood home, taking away slabs of the roof 88 can decipher at Baron's head. I guess the slabs are like star charts or something that might show where the valley is. With the henchmen departing, Kyle has the chance to find his old droid, Ouija, yes, that's the droid's name, and give it the disc. Only problem is that there are a lot of Tusken Raiders around, and they're not too happy to see us. Damn, Kyle, this is a pretty big estate. Inside the house, we explore around and discover a blue wrench. Here starts my gripe with the puzzle design in this game. For the most part, puzzles in this game are straightforward. Being a red key to a red door, blue wrench to blue something, but finding where things go got, well, frustrating. Take, for example, this water puzzle. You know there are locked doors, but there isn't any mechanism to open them, at first. Maybe it's a platforming puzzle and you have to time the jump correctly. Or did we miss something back in the home to control the level of the water like in the sewage mission from the previous game? Nope, it's just a random pipe underwater. Nothing in the game lets you know that you can dive, but I'm happy I figured it out because this won't be the last puzzle in this level involving water. We use the wrench to dissipate the water, go through the now unlocked door, and get confronted by these awesome and terrifying creatures, Malocs. Again, the expanded universe for Star Wars is awesome. I had no idea these things existed, so this was quite the jump scare. They also add another dimension to the enemies Kyle faces since they're flying, and you can get flanked by a swarm of them pretty easily if you're not careful. Kyle finds his father's workshop, and even though the roof slabs have been taken, Ouija is still intact and we get our next cutscene. I don't know what these graphics are defined as, but there's something so special about them. I think they hold up nicely compared to other games from the time.
This message is intended for my son, Kyle Katarn. Kyle, I have left two very important items for you. The first is a map to the Valley of the Jedi, and is embedded in the stone ceiling above this room. The last is a lightsaber. Use it well. Use it for good.
With lightsaber in hand and slabs to find, Kyle makes his way through the aqueducts and irrigation channels. Seriously, did his family own all of this? After some fast water slides and challenging platforming plus that other water puzzle, we make it back to the fixed up moldy crow. Kyle now having a lightsaber, I guess he unlocked force powers as well, which I wasn't expecting. It also was interesting to see that they were split into 3 categories. Neutral powers, light side powers, and dark side powers. Yes, this game has a karma system, and no, it doesn't tell you what actions cause what points, which comes back to bite me later on. And if you're about to type, "it was in the manual," you're probably right. Kyle and Jan travel to Baron's Head, a city taken over by Jarek and the remnants of the Empire. The two determine that 88 is somewhere in the newly constructed Mega Tower, but to get there, they'll have to move through the town surrounding the monolithic structure. Again, these levels are humongous, but we do have an ace up our sleeve: Force Speed. Even at level 2, Force Speed was so fast that at times it made me nauseous. It, however, was very satisfying going at Super Saiyan speed, whacking people with our lightsaber, and it didn't get old for the whole game. We are speed. The town itself was pretty interesting as well. Even though you don't get dialogues with any of the merchants, mostly just scaring them with our insane speed and lightsaber killing abilities, it was such a departure from the first game that I really give the development team credit.
Don't hurt me. What's happening?
The next portion has Kyle trying to infiltrate the tower's walls, and I love that the interiors changed with the presence of the Empire. Dark and red room? Yeah, that's their aesthetic. Now, I wonder if the level designers made this level gigantic because they knew how fast force speed was, or did they have to make force speed incredible to traverse this level? Because damn, I would not want to walk around regularly here. We make our way into the tower, speedily kill off stormtroopers, and unlock force jump, which was also pretty fun to use as well. Somehow 88 found the Valley of the Jedi without the holodisk being deciphered, but maybe it was just the sector of the galaxy, since Jarek doesn't outright say he's found it, just demanding they get ready for hyperspace.
Your payment is waiting for you at one of my cargo ships. Meet it at the refueling station outside of Baron's Head. Saris! Prepare the Vengeance for hyperspace.
Back in the tower, Kyle finds 88, but it's a trap, as Yun, Jarek's youngest Dark Jedi, is tasked with killing Katarn. The two have a lightsaber duel, and I guess Yun tries to blind us. Sorry if it's a bit bright. Kyle defeats him, but spares the young Dark Jedi, and then he gets beamed up by Scotty. Sorry, another thing I couldn't resist. Kyle fights his way to the top of the tower, which had some interesting platforming moments. This was an enjoyable leap from the first game, and Kyle becoming stronger in the Force made it more plausible he would walk on the edge of buildings thousands of feet high for just a secret area. 88 makes his escape to this cargo ship destined for the Valley of the Jedi, and Jan is there for our pickup. Off we go to the next level, the most consequential level for my playthrough. Our objective is to sneak on board the cargo ship, but Kyle will need to approach it on foot. This was another mission that blew me away by the context of the level design. The cargo ship is refueling, so you get this puzzle with the fuel flow. You then get to see the infrastructure that's required to even maintenance ships like these, where I make my fatal mistake. You see these guys that I'm taking out? Well, when I was playing, I swear they were firing at me. Looking over the footage, I might have just been seeing red. These NPCs are neutral, and I murdered them with impunity, which caused Kyle's destiny to deviate a little bit, but enough about that for now. This is a cool shot. On board the cargo ship, there were some really interesting aesthetics here, but I was also so lost at some points I didn't really appreciate them at the time. Kyle finds 88, but he's dead? Kyle has his next duel with Gork and Pick, which are funny names. I shouldn't laugh though, because they beat the crap out of me. Finally, after a bunch of tries, the two are defeated. Kyle picks up 88's head, and Jan yet again comes in clutch. Now, this part confused me a bit, since they leave the cargo ship and I believe go back to Kyle's home planet to use Ouija as a droid necromancer, using 88's head to show them the location of the valley. But wasn't the cargo ship destined to meet up with Jarek in the valley? Why not just stay on until they landed? Regardless, Jarek arrives in the valley, and Bach just loves the vibes.
Very good, Saris.
Kyle and Jan observes Jarek's troops setting up, and there's a lot of them. They call them remnants, but geez Louise, they must be paying good still. Jan stays with the ship as Kyle descends into the valley, then ascends up to the cargo ship and gets attacked by this guy. His name is Maw, and honestly, another cool character design. The two have another lightsaber fight. Kyle defeats Maw, but gets classically played into spiraling into dark emotions with Maw's taunting, which sets up what happens next.
I had the honor taking his head and thrusting it on a spike for all to see. Excellent, Katarn. You've started your journey to the dark side. But that is not enough.
Looks like I can't bail you out of trouble this time.
Strike her down and realize your true destiny as a Dark Jedi, your true power.
Before Kyle's choice, we get the text seduced by the dark side, and I was kind of confused about why. This was before realizing that I went on a murderous rampage back at the cargo ship, and also might have killed some civilians in the outskirts of Baron's End. Whoopsies. I did try to load back thinking there might have been an alternative way to beat Maw, but sadly there was not, and I couldn't change my course. What you see next is not canon for the series, which is Kyle killing Jan, then turning on Jarek to try to steal his power and become the Dark Lord. The good path has Kyle resisting Jarek's will, and this is where I was pretty impressed with the divergence of storylines. If you go down the light side path, Kyle sort of escapes while destroying the Moldy Crow, gets his lightsaber destroyed by Bach, but is ultimately saved by Yun, who sacrifices himself for Kyle since he spared them in their duel.
Why?
He is a Jedi. He deserves a battle.
What happened through my playthrough is Kyle trying to escape the fallen cargo ship, which was epic. Force speeding through a tumbling ship while seeing its inhabitants falling over and getting out just in time made me forget that we were turning into a Sith. Kyle keeps the ship intact, and I kind of shuddered seeing the next portion's briefing text. Correct your previous mistake and destroy him. God damn. Kyle kills Yun, makes his way up to the mountain through an alternative route, and finds Jarek's archaeological dig. I love this payoff of the Valley of the Jedi. This place is spooky. Wait, who killed all these guards? Oh my god, it's the Kell dragons and they want revenge. What a cool lighting effect. Unfortunately, we can't kill these dragons with our bare fists, so we use the next best thing. With some ancient puzzles solved, Kyle goes deeper into the tomb where he finds Bach. Feeble and pretentious Bach. This was a difficult fight, since Bach seems hopped up on some hyperstimulant, and is he teabagging me? Dude, that's even low for you. This arena was my favorite so far. There was so much to this place that I had no information for, but it just had that aura. Bach is defeated, take that you malformed feeble bastard, and Kyle's final fight is about to begin with Jarek. Oh, that was it? With Jarek I would assume killed, but off camera, weirdly, Kyle assumes his rightful position as the new Emperor with the Valley's power and destroys the last remnant of his light side past.
I want you to remember, son, when you're at the Academy, how very proud I am of you.
I thought this ending was pretty interesting, not just for Kyle's conversion to the dark side, but the fact that the game had two very distinct endings. But we're not here to see Kyle's story end on a bad note. Let's rewind a bit to Jarek and Kyle's encounter by the cargo ship. Kyle refuses Jarek's orders to kill Jan, Yun saves him from Saris, Yun dies, Kyle kills Saris and Bach, saves Jan, and confronts Jarek, who has absorbed the power of the Valley. Got all that? Another odd thing is that we don't get this cutscene on the dark side where Jarek takes the Valley's power, but this is the canon ending, so they probably gave it more thought. The two battle and Jarek loses, but still tries to convince Kyle to the dark side, which again, classic dark side tactics.
I'm sure you haven't forgotten. I was the one who murdered your father.
No, I haven't.
With Jarek confirmed KIA, the spirits of the Jedi release from his body. Be free, spirits. Jan and Kyle rejoice while Kyle takes up his newfound love, carving rock, making two statues, one of his father and one of Master Ran. Even though this would have wrapped up Kyle's story neatly, we still have a DLC and a whole other game to get through. How are you doing? Intrigued? I hope so, because let's summarize the expansion pack for Dark Forces 2 Mystery of the Sith in about... Put the timer on. Set 5 years after the ending of Dark Forces 2, Kyle has become a Jedi Master and has taken Mara Jade as his apprentice. Mara is similar to Kyle because she also was a mercenary turned Galactic Empire soldier before discovering she was Force sensitive, or her midichlorian count elevated later in life, then being recruited by the Jedi. The first level takes place on a New Republic base getting attacked by other remnant forces. The player plays as Kyle taking out stormtroopers and destroying the two space bombardment platforms halting the evacuation back at the New Republic base. Sadly, Mysteries of the Sith did not have the live-acted cutscenes, and you can see why I favor them above, well, this.
That takes care of one of them.
Now to set the self-destruct and get out of here.
Back at the base, Kyle informs Mara that he found archives on the Empire's weapon platforms referencing whereabouts of a Sith temple, and the two split up. Mara continues her work for the New Republic, completing covert missions and being a general badass.
Look, I came here to make a simple deal, but no, you wanted to do things the hard way.
Hey wait, I know that ship. Also, I know you're not the enemy, sorry about your friends. After some more Republic dirty work, Mon Mothma tells Mara that Kyle's signal has been lost in the Sith temple, and she tasks her to look for him. Landing on Dromon Kaas, you can tell this place was a Sith enclave long ago. Just look at the creepy statues. Mara investigates the swamp, finding new enemies and more statues that are also puzzles. Eventually, Mara finds the lost temple and senses a lot of evil, which turns out to be true. You have these robot guards everywhere, frickin' overpowered jaguars, and frickin' Sith mummies, or as the wiki describes them, Sith zombies. Nothing is more evil than a Sith zombie. Mara chases Kyle through more of the temple, which seems to have turned into a tomb, very fitting for the series, and finally confronts him, choosing not to join the dark side, and then doubling down by lowering her lightsaber during the fight. This causes Kyle to snap out of his dark side edginess and leave the temple with Mara. This sets up the third game because after all of this crazy Jedi shit, Kyle wants out and abandons the Force. We go into Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. You know the drill, roll the crawl. Jedi Outcast 2 was released in 2002, and I vividly remember playing through it on the GameCube version. It also had a multiplayer mode where you could play against bots, and it was a lot of fun. Jedi Outcast was a good game on release, and a great game after playing through the first two games of the series. Seeing the evolution to get to this point was an accomplishment in so many ways. The graphics are a big step up from Dark Forces, the level designs are still gigantic, but there's enough environmental details and finessing of paths that make it much more accessible. Jedi Outcast takes place 8 years after the events of Return of the Jedi, and roughly 2 years after Mysteries of the Sith. Kyle, having renounced his Jedi ways, has teamed back up with Jan. They make a good pairing, and have been perpetrating mercenary-type missions for the New Republic, which is where we start our last leg of the journey. Kyle and Jan are investigating a supposedly abandoned Imperial outpost. Mon Mothma tells the two that the New Republic has intercepted a fragment transmission from the base where someone has claimed they found the Valley of the Jedi and the mention of the word reborn. She does dismiss this information as just soldiers telling ghost stories, but it might mean there's more of a presence at this outpost than originally thought. One small gripe before we really get into the game is the cutscenes are widescreen, so if you see a character's head cut off, that's why. I couldn't figure out how to change that. Kyle and Jan descend onto the outpost and immediately get swarmed by Remnant Guard. I guess it wasn't abandoned. Kyle has his classic blaster back, which obliterates enemies, and we'll get more of an arsenal throughout the various missions. The first level was well designed, and I can't believe I'm going to make this comparison, but it made me think about Dark Souls 1 in a way. The base you're infiltrating is spread out, but you'll find throughout each sector that there are ways back to the familiar areas. It was cool to discover an elevator that takes you to the beginning from both the midway point and the level's end. Another intriguing game design was having to explore every nook and cranny, not just for the secret areas that come back from the first two iterations, but there is a puzzle within the level that is spread out. To add on to all of that, it seems like the developers could add more set pieces throughout the levels, which gave the game much more of a cinematic feeling. After finding the codes to the base's reactor, Kyle discovers prisoners locked away, and what the Remnant forces were truly hiding. It seems like the Remnant and their general, Fayar, were experimenting on crystals similar to the ones that make lightsabers. The level finishes with Kyle pocketing some of the crystals to take back to the New Republic, and a short cutscene with the general talking to someone called Dasan.
Ah, Admiral Fayar, how go our experiments?
As of this moment, they're not going at all. The testing facility on Kajim has been neutralized by a pair of New Republic mercenaries, and they've taken some of the crystals.
Mercenaries? Who?
Judging by their ship and the conversations our cameras picked up, I believe it was the pilot Jan Oz and her mercenary partner Kyle Katarn.
Katarn, eh? This setback could prove to be the answer to all our problems.
Back with Mon Mothma, she explains they believe the Remnant were trying to artificially infuse the powers of the Force into living subjects, hence the prisoners. and that they were taken from a New Republic mining world of Artus Prime, which is our next stop.
Without knowing the full extent of the Remnant's plans, or the colonists' plight, the New Republic is uneasy about sending in a full liberation force, so...
So you'd like us to sneak in, assess the situation, and call in the fleet if necessary?
Yes.
You know I don't like messing with this force business anymore.
We'll double your usual fee.
We'll take it.
The colony has been taken over by Remnant forces, but that might not be the biggest problem, since the facility itself might not be up to code. Again, I was blown away by the scope of the level design and what it wanted out of the player. Unlike Dark Forces 1 and 2, there wasn't a map for you to keep checking, which made it much more dependent on using your thinking skills. Jedi Outcast luckily didn't have the problem of not being able to distinguish an interactable button from a control panel like Dark Forces 2, and the environment gave hints on where to go through player intrigue, for example seeing this floating mining cart that looked rideable or the extending pipe. Another interesting part of this mission was the cave aliens that you find farther into the mining facility. I'm guessing they dug a little too deep. Even though they weren't tough to kill, just a little unnerving with their noises, I enjoyed their meaning within the context of the level. Kyle discovers the power source for the facility, calls Jan to tell her what he's discovered, and that we'll need to call in the fleet.
Remnant troops are crawling all over this place and they've taken prisoners.
Well, that should bring the Republic running. I'll alert the fleet and pick you up.
Go ahead and call in the reinforcements, but I've got a mind to blow up and prisoners to rescue.
This line shines on Kyle's character. You know that even though he might operate in the underbelly of operations, that he still cares about others, at least canonically. Disregard my dark side playthrough. With the self-destruct initiated, Kyle makes his way to the other side of the facility to free the prisoners, has this epic battle ascending the jail, and releases the miners who want to help take up arms against their captors. We take out more Remnant forces now with help, see some TIE fighters which had exquisite detail for 2002, but then have this pace-breaking moment where Kyle has to coerce this Imperial officer to unlock the hangar doors, which took way too much time. You literally have to have the gun trained on him for the whole duration, which in theory is neat, but in actuality was kind of annoying. Kyle makes it outside with a full battle going on, stormtroopers are everywhere, walkers have been deployed, and orbital defenses are stopping the New Republic's fleet from landing. All of this was awesome and a lot of fun to play through. We destroy the orbital cannons and make our way to Jan at the rendezvous site, but unfortunately, someone has beat us there. We're introduced to Tavion and Dasan, two Dark Jedi that were behind the experiments from the outpost. Even though I was worried about what they would do to Jan, I was invested in Dasan as a character from the start. He references Kyle as a legendary hero for defeating Jarek, and I guess Kyle didn't broadcast that he abandoned the Force, because Dasan makes fun of Kyle's power.
You look like nothing more than a bantha herder.
Well, you look like an overgrown Kowakian monkey lizard, so I guess looks don't count for much. Hand her over.
Dasan and Kyle duke it out, but you can't win the battle, even though I blew up a ton of barrels thinking I had a chance. Dasan tells Tavion to kill Jan, but spares Kyle's life because he isn't even worthy of the act. Kyle, filled with rage, only has one recourse: going back to the Valley of the Jedi and reclaiming his powers, which I enjoyed as a narrative turning point. It was also great to see this place again since it left a lasting impact on me visually. Also, there was no Bach, thank God.
That was the last of them.
Kyle talks with his late father, who has some thoughts on his choices, but quickly ascends into power. I was hoping that we had a throwaway line like, "Did you enjoy the statue I carved out for you?" but we weren't so lucky. Kyle needs one more item now that he's juiced up with the Force, and that's his lightsaber. Off to Yavin 4. Unfortunately for Kyle, Dasan is pretty crafty with his evil doing, and he knew that if he killed Jan, it would lead Kyle back to the valley, so he followed him there.
The death of Katarn's woman has driven him mad, and delivered the Valley of the Jedi into our hands. Contact Admiral Fayar and prepare the troops.
Landing on Yavin 4 was pretty awesome lore and context-wise, since we get to see the Jedi Academy in full swing. I enjoyed being able to observe the young Jedi learning their Force powers, or even more adept students having this lightsaber duel, but who I really wanted to see was Luke. Katarn makes it to Skywalker's room, who already knows why we're here, and when Kyle tells him about Jan's death, Luke knows of Dasan already. Kyle has to retake his lightsaber license exam since it's been a while, but as that's being prepared, Luke divulges to us a little bit of backstory on Dasan.
So he was a student.
Yes, For the first time in his life, Dasan was at peace. He'd found beings who liked him for who he was, beings who encouraged him to develop his talents. Over time, however, things changed.
How?
He became cold, severe. He belittled his fellow students for what he perceived to be their weaknesses, and argued, sometimes violently, with his teachers. During a training session, he struck down and killed a fellow student in cold blood. Dasan said he was too weak to be a Jedi. He fled before we could counsel him, and he has not been heard from since.
Until now.
I enjoyed this bit even if Luke's face made me feel a little uneasy, and even though what was told to us didn't justify Dasan's actions, I understood more of the character, which is always useful. With the trial prepared in record time, Kyle performs the pulls, the pushes, and the jumps, like it was riding a pod racer. Get it? That's this universe's bike. One change I didn't like but kind of understood was force speed being less overpowered than in Dark Forces 2. It's a change of perspective on the word speed because it actually slows time down apart from Kyle, rather than making him faster than the Roadrunner. Gameplay-wise, it just felt like it slowed everything down, but it was super useful during lightsaber fights later on. With the trials completed and our lightsaber in hand, Luke talks with us again, telling Kyle that he's found out that Dasan's ship is registered to a Relo Baruch, a waste management hauler who I would assume is the Tony Soprano of Nar Shaddaa, and that's our next lead. Luke is also worried about our anger getting out of hand, returning us to the dark side. Kyle doesn't really put that at ease with his response.
I don't know if I can do that.
Katarn arrives in Nar Shaddaa and immediately gets into the thick of it after asking this random barkeep about Relo. Slicing and dicing his way out of the trap the barman sets, so much for not using anger as a vehicle, Kyle will have to figure out on his own where Relo is. I thought this was pretty neat where your lightsaber makes marks on the wall. I wasn't expecting that amount of detail. Kyle follows the garbage collector robots to the higher levels, having to avoid close encounters and these damn snipers which caused a lot of frustration. That was somewhat alleviated by being back in the seedy city, no matter the platforming, because again, playing through these games in succession gives you a different perspective on Kyle's journey and honestly, your own. We make it through more varied areas, now utilizing our refound force powers for puzzles, and stumble across another familiar face, Lando Calrissian, who has been jailed by Relo. Lando reveals that Relo is not just a garbage hauler, who would have guessed, and is actually part of a huge smuggling operation out of Cloud City, which has been taken over by Relo's goons and remnant forces. Kyle eventually finds Relo, but their conversation is short. Relo's just in it for the money.
You're Relo Baruch?
In the flesh, but who are you?
Does it matter?
Not really. Any last words?
What's a respectable gangster like you doing mixed up with a remnant slime like Dasan?
Making money, of course.
Katarn frees Lando, deflects his questions about Jan, but the two don't have a lot of time since the whole city is going to be looking for them now. Lando has his ship docked close by and the two make their way there. Unfortunately, Relo's thugs are surrounding the vessel, so Kyle will need to disengage the magnetic locks, destroy the tractor beam, and refuel the ship. All in a day's work. Before the two depart, Relo tries to stop us but gets blasted in the face. Serves him right. Lando drives us to Cloud City hoping that we can take it back for him and learn about Dasan's whereabouts. En route, Kyle dreams of Jan's death and finally confides to Lando that she was killed by Dasan and his minion. The two then discuss the plan where Kyle will infiltrate the city on the lower levels, find a robot with the door codes that Lando has hidden away, which should give him access to Dasan's shipping area, and hopefully more information. Cloud City was another fantastic sprawling level, and even though I might be repeating myself, I think it's important to note. You see a lot of different aspects of the city starting off literally at the bottom of it and making your way to its top. There's functionality to these areas, and it kind of reminded me a lot of Star Wars Galaxies, which they absolutely should bring back. As Kyle continues his way up, he senses a disturbance in the Force, but one he's never felt before, and it's finally revealed to us what the Reborn are. Yeah, remember that fragmented transmission saying the word Reborn? They are the successful experiments of Dasan and Fayar's research from the first level, but we're not an amateur to lightsaber duels at this point. I was kind of disappointed I couldn't force push him off the edge though. We encounter more goons in Reborn, but nothing is stopping Kyle's rampage now. Katarn finds Lando's droid, giving us access to the upper levels, and we finally get the repeater rifle. This thing is just awesome to use. We help out the locals fight back, bye-bye Rodian scum, find a little Easter egg, and get to one of Dasan's ship where Tavion awaits us. Obviously, Kyle wants to take revenge for Jan, and Tavion reveals to Kyle the whole shaboodle. How Dasan followed us to the valley in the beginning and now is letting the reborn army drink from the power of the valley. I don't know what they're drinking because we just floated in some orange light, but whatever. The two battle, Kyle has the upper hand, and I was really interested to see if we got the choice of killing her or letting her go. I found it interesting that they went away from the light-dark side aspect of Dark Forces 2, which I thought would have worked well in this game. Regardless, Tavion, in a last-ditch effort not to be force-choked off a never-ending ledge, tells Kyle that Jan lives, and that they only made it seem like they had killed her, so that's why it was off-camera. She continues to explain they didn't kill Jan because if Kyle didn't visit the valley, she would be the only other person with the knowledge of its location, which is pretty smart if I say so myself. She divulges where Jan is being held on a ship called the Doomgiver. They really do have excellent names for evil ships in these games. But Katarn will need to infiltrate the secret Imperial base hidden within an asteroid to gain access to the ship. Kyle spares Tavion's life and takes the hauler to rescue Jan. While departing, Kyle informs Lando of his next moves to save Jan and that he'll need Lando to contact Luke about the valley being taken by Dasan. The plot is thickening and I was here for it. We sneak our way into the Imperial base and oddly find Luke already there. He tells us that with the valley's power, Dasan has completed the experiments and infused his army with the powers of the Force. Luke did manage to scatter Dasan and the other troops, but the damage is done. The two fend off more reborn and we're given the information that Dasan has been hauling cortosis, a rare mineral that is resistant to the lightsaber's power. Luke tasks us with finding the Doomgiver and he'll try to figure out what they're manufacturing with the rare mineral, and off we go. Kyle does Kyle stuff, platforming and killing hundreds of remnant soldiers. We're also introduced to these battle droids that had a really interesting design and were new to me. I don't know if they ever show up in other iterations of the Star Wars universe. Another check in the win column for functionality within the universe. You might have asked yourself, how do these gigantic facilities get power? Maybe that's just me, but seeing the system was awe-inspiring. Kyle continues onward with the same consistent gameplay. Hey, if it works, it works.
What kind of technology is this? Black armor, not again.
That's a reference we all understand. We then have to face off against the Reborn with the lightsaber-resistant armor, and oh boy did I die a lot to them. Honestly, I died a lot throughout all of the games. They were pretty tough. Defeating the souped-up Reborn, the game does another pacing blunder with a stealth portion. Yeah, I'm not joking. It's not the fact that I don't like stealth portions of games, but when we've just maimed and murdered half of the ship, then to be told, don't let them sound the alarm, I just don't believe it. They also don't tell you when that portion is done, so after a certain point, I was sneaking around for no reason. There was a nifty section where you had to turn off the lights to a room to continue, and that's something I vibed with more. Anyways, Kyle enters the Doomgiver, sees Luke and Dasan in a duel which Dasan sort of wins, which is wild, or shows off how much the valley's power matters. Kyle is a stowaway going to who knows where. Another great environmental detail was seeing the ship traveling through hyperspace. I just love that. Kyle fights through the ship, solving droid puzzles and signal issues. With the transmission jammer offline thanks to our intelligence, yeah, I had to look this one up, Katarn contacts Rogue Squadron and gives them the frequency of the ship so they can find us.
We've locked onto your signal and are in pursuit. That is one whalodon of a ship you hooked, Kyle.
Can you bring her down?
Maybe, but I feel a lot better about our chances if somebody on the inside were working to disable the ship's shield array.
With Rogue Squadron in an aerial fight with the ship's defenses, we still need to find Jan, but I wanted to mention something small before. Throughout the games, the stormtroopers have had little throwaway lines that I found funny. Most are about, show me your ID, or you're in a restricted area, but this one was particularly well placed.
I hear the new Shadow Troopers have performed better than expected.
That doesn't bode well for us.
Yeah, we'll probably be replaced in no time.
Give us that armor and we'd do just as well.
I think it's great world building having the stormtroopers worried about their obsolescence now that the Dark Trooper program has gained momentum. Another great moment right after this was being able to open the bay doors that clears a room nicely. We find Jan in one of the holding cells and pleasantries are short-lived. She tells Kyle that they interrogated her first for information on the valley, but then wanted to know more about the academy and its layout. Kyle puts 2 and 2 together, realizing that the Doomgiver has traveled to Yavin 4, and they'll need to destroy the ship before most of the Dark Troopers have deployed on the planet.
I'm pretty sure the shield generators are through there.
I know. You get an escape pod ready and wait for me. This shouldn't take long.
Don't do something stupid like die on me.
And put you through the same misery I've been through? Not on your life.
These two have chemistry. Kyle finds the shield array for the Doomgiver, but just as he's about to destroy it, leaving it vulnerable to Rogue Squadron, Fayar appears in some unique trooper suit. That look of smugness kills me.
Pleasure it is to finally meet you face to face.
The pleasure's all yours, I'm sure.
The Oz woman thinks quite highly of you. Did you know that? She must have whimpered your name on at least 17 different occasions over the last few days.
Is that supposed to make me angry? I'm past that, Gallic.
Oh, really? Then what if I tell you that even as we speak, Dasan is descending on the Jedi Academy with thousands of his Force-enhanced, lightsaber-resistant warriors, eliminating the scourge of the Jedi for all time? I, Gallic Fayar I, the genius who conceived of the Shadow Armor, will rule the galaxy with a Cortosis fist. Worlds will tremble. Stars will shudder.
Your shields will fall.
Certified badass. There wasn't really a mechanic to this boss fight. Fayar killed me a bunch of times to the point where I did look up his weakness and the guy just said, shoot him with rockets to lower his shield. Well, okay then. With the general dealt with, Kyle makes it to the escape pod Jan has gotten ready, and the two descend onto Yavin 4 as the Doomgiver explodes in the background. Nice.
Okay. Try to avoid anyone with a lightsaber.
Good advice, Jedi.
They do kiss. Unfortunately, that wholesome moment is ruined by the swamp leading to the academy. I still can't believe it, but another Dark Souls reference. I really hate the swamp more than Blight Towns, but I digress. After a lot of searching and being slowed down by the murky water, we make it to the academy that's being attacked by stormtroopers and Reborn, and it's not looking so good. At least you can team up with some of the apprentices, and there were a couple of cool battles to be had. Kyle makes it to Dasan, who quickly runs away into a secretive part of the temple. We pursue him only to have Dasan play mind tricks on us, one of which had an impressive visual reflection. We finally confront Dasan with nowhere to run, and the two have a back and forth about who really is in control.
Know that the Force is not a shield to protect the useless, but is in reality a weapon to empower the worthy.
None of that's gonna happen, Dasan. Most of your shadow troopers are being mopped up by real Jedi. Ones who've been trained to use the Force. The rest blew up with your ship.
What a pathetic ruse.
I thought it was an interesting point that even though the Reborn had the ability to use the Force and were given the Valley's power, they didn't know how to truly wield it with discipline and training. It makes it plausible that actual Jedis could deal with them, and it's a great advertisement for
Luke's Academy, located right off of 9A in the north side of Yavin 4. Come one, come all. Only if you are Force enabled. Terms and conditions apply.
Dasan tries that classic Dark Jedi trick of trying to convince Kyle to join him, but buddy, we already had our edgy middle-aged Sith time, which we chose for ourselves, thank you very much, and we're not doing it again. After dodging Force lightning and enabling Force speed, Dasan is dealt with. But I wanted to know why he came all the way down here. What was that energy beam that was at the start? Could anyone fill me in on that? Regardless, it looks like the day is saved. Kyle and Jan talk to Luke, who has a meaningful line about Katarn never being a failure, and the two have booked a long vacation on the beaches of Spyra. Now that's what I call a satisfying ending.
After that, we'll see.
Yeah.
Take your time, Kyle. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Thanks, and may the Force be with you, Luke.
What an amazing series and what amazing viewers, yes you are. Without you, none of these adventures and retrospectives would be possible, so thank you for taking time out of your day to join me. I really hope you enjoyed this. The Jedi Knight series encapsulates what makes the Star Wars universe enthralling. Wait, that was my thesis from an hour ago. Playing through all three of the games and Mysteries of the Sith had some great moments. Some moments of frustration, and overall, just a joy to experience. I'd love to hear from you if you played these games back in the day or recently and your thoughts on them. Seriously, did anyone else have trouble finding interactable buttons in Dark Forces 2? And that's that. I'd appreciate it if you click that like button for that YouTube algorithm, and if you really enjoyed the video, check out some of my other stuff. By the time this video is out, I will have moved to my new house and won't have internet for a while. Even though there might be a delay for the next video, it will come soon. Thanks for your understanding. Hope all is well and all the best. Sincerely, Dog Dad.